Hi, it's Kathleen. How are you today or this evening, depending on where you're joining from? This is Level Up Your English with Kathleen Elise. Sure, but I can't tell if it's too bright or not. Sometimes the screen glares off, and it creates a funny color. So sorry about that. As I just said, I'm Kathleen, and welcome. So we're here today to make sure that you get your questions answered. And yeah, my screen is glaring off my glasses. I'm just going to do this because then all I focus on is the glasses, and that never works. So we'll just put those over there. So I do have my notes, so I will have to put them on to look at that. But tonight we're going to talk about, first of all, introduce yourself and let me know in the chat. I pinned the note up there, but let me know in the chat where you're calling from, or where you're viewing from, I should say, and what your native language is, as well as who you are. And ask me any questions that you want, because the reason we're coming live, yes, I have a topic to cover, but I'm here mostly to get your questions answered live. So it doesn't have to relate to the theme. Anything you have, let me know. Just ask it and we'll get them answered. So I'm going to, again, the purpose of these is to give you time during your day at hopefully a time that doesn't conflict with, work or family or school or whatever it is that you have with your life. So I try to keep it shorter than 30 minutes. That's my goal. So that you still, if you're coming at lunchtime or after work, before work, whatever that may be, that you can get your stuff answered, but still have, especially if you're on your lunch break, so that you can still have time to eat your lunch and take a breath before you have to go back to work, or before you finish your commute, and then have to start with all the stuff that happens with family and your life outside of work. So the goal is to keep it short, sweet, to the point, but give you as much time as possible. And now I'm realizing what it is. My candles, I put the candles on. You can't really see them, but that's what's causing that glow. So it's night. For me, it's midnight. So the candles just give it a nice feel. So anyway, ask me your questions. So tonight we're going to talk about 4 things that you can do to lay a really good foundation for being able to pronounce your English. Okay, so again, I'm going to have to pop these on. These are for reading. So I might not be able to avoid the glare. So I don't want to put them down here, because then I look like my old English teacher, my literature teacher, who would just look at me, and that's not a look I want to give you guys. So anyway, so we're talking about laying the groundwork for correct pronunciation in English. So the first thing I want you to really consider, and I've put these in a particular order because I think it's important to learn it this way. So first, what you want to do is you want to either live with the person in front of you, or watching videos, movies, TV, whatever it is. Watch what people do, native speakers. Watch what they do with their mouth. See how their mouth is shaped. Look at what they do to the best of your ability with their tongue, with their teeth, with their jaw. Listen to what they do, how that sounds when it comes out of their mouth. So because what we need to remember is that pronunciation is, I'm trying to think how to say it. Pronunciation is just replicating sounds. So language is a series of sounds that a group of people living in the same area with the same culture, similar traditions, there's sounds that they make so that they can relay a message to other people in their community. And communities in this area have their sounds that they do. And depending on how much interaction they have with communities around them or in another place will determine how similar the sounds are. Okay. So, which is why we have people here where I'm in Massachusetts, but in America, our language came from England and, the British Isles for the most part. And so we have taken that language that we grew up with and we've adapted it to our lifestyle, how we've had to develop in this new area. And as we spread out over this area, we've taken that base language with us, which was English, and we've adapted it as we've gone along, depending on what other influences we've come across. So, for example, in the Appalachian Mountains, I'm not 100% sure exactly which states. I think Virginia is a good example. I'm terrible with geography. That was not my strong point. But in the Appalachian Mountains, you have a strong Scottish influence. So a lot of the language that was used, a lot of the terminology, a lot of the sounds that you hear, they're English, but with a heavy Scottish influence. So yes, the Scottish people nowadays speak English, but their base language is the Celtic language, and that has several different, I'm not going to say types, but it's the only word I can think of right now. So you can see how the sounds that we make can transform as we spread out and meet other people who use the same basic sounds that we do. Okay. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, please let me know. It's just, I want you to get to understand that language, my speaking to you, is all about the sounds that I make and what those sounds represent. So we're here to find a way and give you a good foundation in how to take these new sounds and match the meanings of those sounds up with the sounds that your language makes that mean the same thing or that mean similar things so that we can communicate. Okay. So as again, I'm learning Korean. So I have to learn the sounds that the people of Korea have, and now, North Korea and South Korea, it's the same base language, but they do speak differently, I'm understanding. So I'm focused on South Korea at the moment, or South Korean. And so those sounds, I have to now learn not only how to produce those sounds with my mouth, but also reconcile these new sounds with the sounds that I know and I'm comfortable with and I understand. So In order to do that, what I do, and this applies to any language you're learning, but we have specific tips on learning English. What I found to be the most effective is to, again, watch how I'm forming my mouth, what's happening with my tongue, if you can see it. Is the sound coming from up here in my nasal cavity? Is it coming from my vocal cords, or is it just air? Things like that. So listen to the sounds and then watch how those sounds are made, and then you do the same thing and you replicate the sound. And if just keep watching. It's so it would be difficult to do this in front, as you're having a conversation with someone. It would be considered rude to just stare at their mouth and watch, but you can, they'll understand that you're learning the language. So even if you just address it ahead of time, saying, just please don't think I'm being rude. I'm just trying to learn as much as I can about how to speak English. So you can just explain it that way, be upfront, and most people won't have a problem. But what, again, and so I find that watching videos or watching conversations that have been recorded, it's I prefer to watch real life interactions versus television or fiction initially, because the real life conversations are the conversations I'm going to be needing to replicate. So that's where I focus initially when I'm learning a new language. And then I move on to dramas and novels and things like that. Movies and comedies and things like that, to then add that layer. But so to make a short story long, listen to the sounds and watch how they're formed, and then practice that until you have a pretty good matchup. Okay, so then what you need to do is what I do, and doing these lives and producing the content here for this the channel allows me that practice, because even as a native speaker, there's something you're always going to be learning. So this just gives me the practice to, again, not only to make sure that I'm producing it correctly, but also it helps me to think through how it's all happening and how it all fits together, so that I can give it to you. But when I'm trying with my Korean studies, I will watch, Korean. I haven't gotten to the news because I'm not quite there with the sophistication of the language yet, but I will watch interviews with people, and I will, with things on that idea, and I'll study the mouth, and I'll pause it, and I will try to reproduce it, and then I'll let it go, rewind it, let it go, and keep doing it that way. So then what I do after I've done that is I then will come back, use my phone, whatever it may be, and I will record myself practicing what I've just learned to the best that I can at that moment. And then I'll go back to the interview or whatever it is I just watched, and I'll play them along side by side to see how I did, and because I need to hear it, and it's good for you to hear it outside of your own head, because your voice sounds different in your head. So you need to get it out of your head and listen to it out in the real world. So those are fantastic helps. Listening to myself, watching myself next to a native speaker, watching us say the same thing helps me to hear, okay, what sounded really fantastic in my head didn't quite come out the same. So, all right, where did I go wrong? What can I do to make it better? So, that's really something that I highly suggest you get in the habit of doing, is recording yourself now and then playing it back so that you can see, oh, no, that actually is good. Um, and then also coming live. That's our bonus. Whenever you have the opportunity to speak with someone um, who is a native speaker of the language you're learning, take the opportunity to talk to them and learn from them and ask them. People really don't have a problem for the most part of, you're trying to learn. I appreciate that. And I know that when I've tried to learn, I said, was it last week? I think I said that, or maybe it was in my newsletter. I can't remember. But I went to Monaco and I learned as much French as I could learn in the time I had. And people in the stores really appreciated it. And actually, I'll tell you this story, which I love this story. It was I arrived on Monday afternoon, so Tuesday or Wednesday morning. I was there. I gave myself a special birthday treat, and I spent 26 days there. And I had rented a studio from an artist. She rented out part of her studio. And so at breakfast, I tried my French, and, she helped me out, and we've actually became friends right away. And we're still friends today. But the second or third day, whatever it was, I think it was Wednesday, I broke the principality up into the different sections, and I would spend a day in each section. And I would, I'd explored, and I'd spend a lot of time writing, etc. And when that particular day, I mailed a letter home telling people, oh, how the flight was, and just basic news. And I was waiting in the post office, and it was a long line, but nothing that shouldn't have just been, gone through smoothly, except for there were some English speaking tourists, and I won't say what country they're from, but they were causing a big scene, and they were obnoxious, and they were really kind of trying to bully the postman, or the person behind the counter, who was trying to help them, and they were just being rude. And so it was holding up the line, and the line was getting longer, and I was probably about a quarter of the way in the front. So I was in the first quarter of people. And because I had been studying, I learned more than I realized. And I was listening to the conversation that was going on behind me, and people were complaining about it and saying that, oh, these foreigners, why do they always have to ruin our days? And one woman was saying, I have an appointment to get to. I'm going to lose my job if I don't get back in time, and, to the appointment, and then come back. And it had already been a while. So, and then one woman made the comment, again, they were speaking in French, but because I had done these things, I had learned more than I realized. She said that, if they're going to keep us waiting, they should at least provide manicures and pedicures. I could really use one. And I understood the gist of it, and I laughed. And everybody looked at me, and I said, oh, sorry, And then I said to the woman who was gonna be late, I asked her if she wanted to switch places with me. She was more in the back of the line, and I was closer to the front. And everybody was shocked. And I asked in French if she wanted to, and everybody was shocked, and they were so appreciative. The woman she says, she was so appreciative. And then by the time we finished the conversation, she ended up being next. So, and then it was just a really great time that I would never have had if I hadn't, done these steps. And so this is all to say about practice it in the real world, which was the next step. I can't remember. I'm sorry. I can't remember how it connected to. Oh, yes, I do. Sorry. This is kind of a segue one, and I forgot all about that until I was just talking. So yes, record yourself using real life conversations, because it's going to help you when you get into a real life conversation. You'll be able to understand the patterns and the rhythms and the intonations and the inflections, and how those all add to the communication of the language. So sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent, but it did fit. And it's a good transition to the next step. So let me just recap. So the first, we have you watch and listen. Watch what people are doing, listen to the sounds that they're making, and then practice that, and compare yourself by recording yourself, and then compare it and make your improvements from that. And then the third one is practice it in the real world. Now you have to remember, and again, I'm finding this difficult when I'm trying to write Korean sentences. Think in English. When you get out there and you're talking, put aside all of the things you understand about your own language, and you have to think in English when you go to communicate. Other than that, you're going to be putting things in the wrong order, or thinking it's just not going to work. And actually, I was doing some studying of Korean today, watching a video, and the person was explaining that if you just use this basic structure, in English we do subject, verb, object. In Korean, it's the subject, the object, and the verb. But there are all these other pieces that have to be included that tell you all of the things that we would tell you in a different way in English. And so if you try to do it this certain way, but you're thinking, so if I were trying to create a sentence in the Korean language, but thinking in English, they just don't compare. There's no way to compare it, and nobody would understand a word I was saying. It might sound good, I might pronounce everything right, but nothing would make sense, because I wouldn't be putting in the important things that belong to their sentence structure. So if you're doing the same thing in English, if you're taking your sentence structures and trying to put them into English, it's just never going to work. So make sure that when you get out there and you're speaking to people, make sure you're doing it by thinking in English. Okay? I admit this is tedious and it can be exhausting trying to do it. So start small and work your way up, but do it. Okay? You will not regret it. You'll save yourself a lot of hassle when you do that. Okay, and so then, oh yeah, I'll tell you those stories in a minute, because I see that we're coming up, and I talk a lot. And then the final thing is to practice your sounds in isolation. And what I mean by that is, I want you to, if you've been watching my morning meetings on Instagram, you'll see that I've been giving some tips on how to reproduce the sound. So I'll just go through the letter T, the hard sound of T. So you take the tip of your tongue, and you place it just kind of where your teeth and your gum line meet. Sometimes I put it in the the curve of the back of my teeth, but just there, and it's just the tip of your tongue. Your tongue is away from everything else, and you just go, and then you say your word. Or you can just go along going, but it's better if you can say a word so you understand the transition. So, train, tick, talk, Thomas. So do that. That's isolating the sound and getting that muscle memory. Okay. So go through all of the sounds that you've learned and do those exercises, and then you can learn more sounds and do exercises for that. That's just standard exercise that I teach people because it gives you a rhythm, and I find that learning things with a rhythm is very helpful, but you're not spending a long time on the so you don't rely on that to say the word. Okay, so you're not always going to be saying train left today, or so, but practice the sounds in isolation, and then also practice the transitions. So, and one of the best ways to do that is with tongue twisters. Okay, so you can just do any kind of a search for tongue twisters in English, and you'll come up with hundreds of them. So definitely you can start with that, and that as you get the hang of how they're developed, you've said enough of them, you can figure out how to make your own. And I like to do that because I make my own focused on the sounds I have the most trouble with. Okay. So definitely do that. And it will be amazing how much you improve as from where you are now, but also how much easier it will be going forward. The more you do this, follow these 4 steps and be committed to them, the easier it will be with your pronunciation, which leads to fluency, because if you're pronouncing things correctly, then people are going to understand you. So that's the first step. You have to learn to speak the language before you can move on to writing the language. So, which we will get into, but I'm walking you through these steps. These lives are done. The themes are done in a particular order so that you will be building your foundations. So we're learning our foundations of correct pronunciation in English. So actually, I'm not going to tell those stories. Well, just real quick, one of the exercises is that take field trips. So if you have to do your grocery shopping, challenge yourself to do it in English. Okay, only in English. Use the words that you know as you're going up and down the aisles. Oh, cereal, this is the cereal I'm looking for. Go through the vegetables, name all the vegetables, or read them. Sometimes they don't always match up, but read them and see if you can match it up. Use it as a vocabulary lesson. Okay. That was one thing I definitely wanted to tell you, because that way you can be learning without the stress of studying. Okay. It's just a nice way to inject some learning into your daily routine that doesn't have to take away from your life in general, because you've got enough doing that right now. So anyway, okay, we are definitely coming up on the time. So it was good to see you. Make sure you leave your comments, like, subscribe, and I'll keep coming back to these. So if you leave comments and with your questions or whatever, I will answer them. So don't worry if you didn't get to make it and you're watching the replay, okay? So I feel like I could talk for another several hours on this, but goal is to let you get back to your life. So you just have a wonderful day. It's great to see you, and we'll see you next week. But don't forget, I'm going live at noon today too. So if you have more questions, you can ask there if you want to. This is always, they're never going to be the same topic, same basic information, but there's always something new that didn't get here. So watch them both. Okay. All right. We'll see you soon, and enjoy your day. Good luck with everything. Let me know how you're doing. Okay. Bye bye.